He's got one foot in the frying pan and one in the pressure cooker. Believe me, as a bowler, I know that right about now, your bladder feels like an overstuffed vacuum cleaner bag, and your butt is kind of like an about-to-explode bratwurst.
Hey, you mind? I wasn't talking when you were bowling.
Was I talking out loud?
Hi, this is Vanessa Angel from the movie Kingpin. I wanted to say a big hello to all the listeners of Munson's at the Movies. I'm so excited to hear that there's a podcast inspired by the movie Kingpin.
Welcome to Munson's at the Movies, another Munson's Choice episode. My name is Kyle. I will be your host. I'm here once again with the rest of the Munsons. I want to give them a wide berth.
He's what is called a born loser. A real Munson.
Give them a chance to talk a little bit about what's going on in life. Rigby.
Same old, man. Just riding out the quarantine day by day, watching seemingly more and more movies as the time passes. Just hanging tough and not going outside unless I need to.
Case?
Well, somebody's told me that they started a quarantine a couple weeks ago. Wasn't aware of that. So apparently I've been running around the neighborhood, breathing on everybody and irritating. Social distancing.
Not a big news guy.
No, not a big news guy. But, just hanging around, getting things done, staying busy, with a variety of projects. I continued my culinary exploits this weekend, making a dramatic macaroni and cheese video that was well received. So I've got that working for me.
It's pretty epic. Your editing skills are top notch right now, Craig. Warren?
Yeah, I think in this time in quarantine, I've found a black hole and I've transported into the future, and I've immediately become like a 75-year-old man. I wake up early, I drink coffee while doing a crossword, and then I stare blankly into the yard and cuss like plants that are growing where they shouldn't be and animals that are eating flowers that they shouldn't be. So I'm miserable as shit.
You're a one-man neighborhood watch. That's what you are.
Get off my dirt lot.
Throwing rocks at kids.
Yeah.
James?
I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum as Warren, but in the same vein. I've reverted back to being a college kid who's bad at college. I am drinking more than I've ever drank before. I go to bed at ridiculous hours at night. I sleep in way too late, and I'm late on most of my homework and actual work assignments. So I reverted back to like 2006, James.
You're halfway to losing your Munson card, man. Can't have that.
You got the 2006 faux hawk?
No, but that's only because I don't trust my wife with clippers.
Time to dye that hair blonde, James.
That's right.
Really, spring
Puka
break.
shells are coming back.
Please don't. For Kate's sake, please don't. On my end, much like Warren, I feel like I'm in the middle of the battle against my yard. I've got the dandelions popping up all over the damn place. I've laid down 2 different rounds of weed killer, and they continue to pop up. So I found myself yesterday for about half an hour just like plucking the long versions of dandelions so they don't spread their seed all over the place. And I don't even own this home. That's the ridiculous part about this. I'm freaking renting. I'm sitting having a stupid battle against the yard. It's mildly annoying, boys. So as mentioned early on, this is a Munson's Choice episode, so it's a little bit of a random piece of content in between our normal cadence of episodes. Just like we did with the Jessica Chastain episode, we took 5 actors that we all personally enjoy or find intriguing and put them on the wheel. So in this case, Warren threw on Idris Elba. Warren, what was the thought process there?
Guy's hot as hell. His voice is incredible. The end.
Idris is a talented dude. You just want to watch Hobbs and Shaw again.
I wanted to watch Rock and Rolla like 55,000 times because Guy Ritchie is great in those movies only.
Can't disagree with you.
I guess Aladdin too. The new Aladdin. He did that one, which was surprising.
James, you threw on Emma Stone.
Yeah, the reasoning was similar to Warren's again, is she's hot. No, she's in a bunch of great movies, and she's young, and her career has kind of made her a movie star right from the jump, so I think it'd be cool to cover someone so young and so talented.
Yeah.
I threw on Ken Watanabe, partially because I love The Last Samurai and think he's incredible in that movie, and just pretty much everything I'd seen him in, I found it to be enjoyable. Inception, other films like that. So I felt like Ken would be a good option. Rigby, you threw on Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, he's obviously got a pretty wide range of good movies the past 25 years. I love Traffic. I love the Usual Suspects, Snatch,
Sicario.
Sicario, The Pledge with Jack Nicholson. He plays like a deranged guy in that movie, which is probably what he plays in every movie he's in almost. Yep. But he's a very talented guy. I'd love to dive into his filmography.
In a rounded out case, added Rosario Dawson.
Listen to some of these movies: Sin City, Clerks 2, Guide to Recognizing Your Saints, Death Proof, Grindhouse, Descent, Eagle Eye, and Kill Shot. And that's just 2005, 2006, 2007. Wow. So she has a ton of movies that, we've all seen and would have been fun to dig into and watch some of those things. Plus, she's had some really cool TV roles.
Yeah, she was in the Marvel universe, right? She was on, was it Daredevil?
She was in all of them. She was kind of this connecting character between them.
Yeah, she was close to Luke Cage. That's right. All right, so we took those 5. We spun the wheel, and I swear there was no collusion. I just spun the wheel, and it landed on Ken Watanabe.
What are the chances Kyle's pick just keeps getting picked?
Go to Vegas, bro.
Yeah. What a gambler, this kid.
I'm 2 for 2 on these. You know how it's going to go from here. I will never get one of my Munson choices ever again.
Good.
Watch me go 5 for 5, boys.
I know. It's going to be nuts.
Well, just tell me who you want in the future, and I'll just make my choice. A little reverse psychology.
Yeah, that works.
Well, there you go. So we're covering Ken Watanabe. Super fascinating guy. Has a very long career. But before we get into all of that, as always, James is going to drop us with some actor trivia.
All right, folks, we're going to do 2 truths and a lie. If you're new here, I'll explain. If you're a veteran of this game, you know that the lie is based around an actor from Fast and the Furious. So I'm going to say 2 true things about Ken Watanabe and 1 thing that is true about an actor from Fast and the Furious. And the boys are going to try to guess which one that is. So the first fact is he was raised Jehovah's Witness and was not allowed to watch any movies as a child. The second fact is 2/3 of the characters he's played on film have either been dying or have died in the movie. And the third fact is he's been diagnosed with cancer and beat it 3 separate times in his life.
It's damn good, man.
Wow. Jeez.
James, say the first one again.
He was raised Jehovah's Witness and was not allowed to watch movies as a child.
That smells like a Fast and the Furious fact. So
yeah.
Number 1.
I think 1, too.
Just stinks like one.
I know he's battled cancer before. I don't know about the 3 times, but and also the second fact just sounds real just based off the movies I've seen.
Let me hear the other 2 guesses.
I'm going to say number 2.
I'm gonna go number 3 just because I think he's beat it twice.
Oh, that's true.
I hope if he has it a 3rd time, I hope he beats it then. But I have no fucking clue who in Fast and Furious could beat anything.
All right. Well, again, you guys are pretty hip to my tricks here. Fact number 3 was in fact true. He's been diagnosed with and beat cancer 3 times in his life. He got leukemia and then relapsed a few years later. And then in 2015, he was actually diagnosed with stomach cancer and beat that as well. Fact number 2, also true. He has actually died or been dying in 2/3 of the movies he has been in, which is, he even broke it down even further. Mostly he's been stabbed by swords, and he's been poisoned 3 separate times. And fact number 1 is not about him at all. He was not raised Jehovah's Witness, and he was allowed to watch movies his entire life. That is actually a fact of Michelle Rodriguez, the star of Fast and the Furious.
Ooh,
give me a break. Number 1 just seemed way too out there for it not to be true.
I had another fact I was going to use, but it was it's so awesome I didn't want to share it because you would clearly be able to tell it wasn't about someone from Fast and the Furious. And it's that he's one of 10 actors of Asian descent to ever be nominated for Academy Award in acting. And there's no way I say that fact and you guys are like, Is that someone from Fast and the Furious? You'd be like, no, there's no chance that's somebody from Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, there's only one option from Fast and the Furious, and it ain't him.
Yep, correct.
Thanks, James. Case is going to give us a little background in Watanabe's snapshot and box office history.
Getting dialed into him, he's the blockbuster movies he's in do well. He's been in a couple of movies, and I think this hurts him in American cinema and getting more roles. That personally, I think he should be in a lot more movies, and he should be the leading man or the top supporting actor in a lot more movies than he is. But I think the big thing is anytime that he's lead or a lead supporting role, the movies they don't open well and they lose money. And unfortunately, in Hollywood, they tend to favor movies that or favor directors and actors and those types of combinations that make money. And unfortunately, he hasn't. He's had some giant successes, but he's had some real doozies that haven't done well. I'm going to give you guys 3 movies that did not do very well in the box office, and I want you guys to tell me which one had the worst opening weekend. Okay, we had Cirque du Freak, The Vampire's Assistant, Shanghai, and we had Sea of Trees. Of those movies, which one did the worst on opening weekend only?
I'm going Sea of Trees because it's an A24, a little bit of a smaller production.
Okay.
That would be my guess.
Sea of Trees.
Cirque du Freak, because I've never heard of that movie until this exact moment.
Okay.
I'm going Sea of Trees as well.
Just Cirque du Freak, because fuck that movie.
Cirque du Freak ended up bringing in $6.3 million on opening weekend off of a $40 million budget, and it actually only lost $1 million in the box office.
Who the fuck saw that in theaters?
Big Josh Hutcherson fans. That too.
Yeah, so not me, not you guys apparently either. The winner of our competition is Sea of Trees. Had a $25 million budget. The worldwide gross when all was said and done was $907,000, losing that movie $24 million.
Oh,
ladies and gentlemen, we have a new record low opening of $2,000.
Whoa.
That's it, 2,000. I finished my sentence.
Dude.
Was it the premiere? And that's like, what? How does that work?
That movie made just a little bit more than I made from the stimulus package.
You are correct, sir.
That's
so it's unbelievable. I mean, a Marvel movie makes that much money in popcorn on opening day.
Right.
From one theater.
One theater, yeah.
From one theater. So, and I think those things hurt him, right? At the end of not the end of his career, but as his career has gone on, I think those types of things hurt him because, again, Hollywood's trying to make money.
Well, before we get into his first feature film, he started acting in 1982. So between 1982 and 1985, he was in a variety of Japanese television. His first movie that he was in was called MacArthur's Children. He played Tetsuo in 1984. But it wasn't really until 1985 that he's in kind of his first feature film, and that's Tampopo. And Rigby's going to talk about that one. And before Rigby goes into it, based on the research we saw, this had a very high Rotten Tomatoes score. So it was interesting going into it.
It was a fun movie to watch. It was super creative. It's a comedy film out of Japan from 1985, as Kyle said. It's described as a ramen western or a noodle western in reference to a spaghetti western because the two main characters, or the two, main male characters in the movie, Goro, who's played by this actor, I hope I get this right, Tsutomu Yamakaze, but his sidekick in the movie is played by Ken Watanabe. His name is Gun. They wear sort of these Western, they wear cowboy hats and scarves and vests and cowboy boots. They kind of have like an old spaghetti Western style look to it. But basically the main plot of the movie is that these two truck drivers, played by Yamakaze and Watanabe, they are driving through the night and they're hungry and they stop at this ramen noodle shop where they find this shop that's sort of riddled with problems. You know, the customers are drunk, the food is bad, and they see the owner, she's this widow, and they sort of give her these pointers on how they can improve the shop. And after she takes the pointers. She asks Watanabe, but it's mainly Goro. It's mainly Tsutomu Yamakaze. He's sort of the main character in all of this. She asks him to be her teacher. The main plot of the movie is them teaching the owner of the noodle shop, whose name is Tampopo, how to become basically the hottest ramen noodle restaurant in her town. It's a great story. That part of it is awesome. The woman who plays the owner, I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. She's incredibly like charming in it. She's very sort of sad when she needs to be and also happy when she needs to be. She's a good character for who they're trying to portray, sort of her down on her luck ramen noodle shop owner who needs some good news to turn things around, basically. Where the movie gets crazy is that there are some crazy subplots that have nothing to do with the main narrative. They're basically a series of sketches about food, both from a sensory standpoint, but there's also this weird sort of subplot where these two people basically use food during sex, and it gets pretty gross. There's a famous scene where these two, a guy and a girl, crack an egg, and they basically play with the egg yolk in their mouth like a game of teeter-totter. It's one of the grossest things I've ever seen.
Gross,
and it's disgusting.
Oh,
Some very graphic sex scenes with food in this, not including the egg yolk. You know, there's a lot of strawberries on nipples and just like stuff that I wasn't prepared for. I kind of thought this was going to be a happy-go-lucky film, and I was way wrong.
sounds like the origin of the term food porn.
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought for sure you were going to tell me they did a Portuguese breakfast, and I was about to barf.
I don't even know what that is, but it sounds
That's
awful.
over my head too. I won't ask.
If you don't
what
know,
that
you
is.
can't afford it.
Exactly. It's like a ZJ.
Go watch Deuce Bigelow too; it'll tell you everything.
There's a series of subplots that include the food porn. There's another sketch where this woman is trying to teach these other women how to eat spaghetti without slurping loudly, while the guy next to them is slurping so loudly that these women are distracted. So it's kind of funny, sort of like strange subplots. They're creative and they add sort of some pizzazz to the movie. I almost thought they were too much. There's like 5 or 6 of them in the movie, and they kind of lose focus on the main narrative. I wish that they would have just gone with the main narrative a little bit more, because I love that story. Just these two guys who are trying to help this woman basically turn her life around. Watanabe has a small role in this, and his role sort of seems to shrink as the movie goes on. And his partner is really the main driver of the film. He's the guy who's giving her all the advice, and she's listening to him at the end of the day. So it's one of those movies that is probably even more popular now just because the foodie sort of culture has kind of taken off. And you can't really watch this movie without getting hungry, because there's like awesome shots of like the ramen noodles like boiling in the pot and like the pork and stuff, and you get really hungry. But then you see these subplots and you're like disgusted by food as well. So I've never been like hungry and disgusted at the same time. But it was probably a good starting off role for him. It's one of those movies that I didn't really know how to feel at the end of it. It's sort of like a mind fuck, because like I said, you feel these emotions, you know, when you watch it, you get hungry, but then you're sort of just like, who are these people? Like, why are they doing this to themselves? The 100 on Rotten Tomatoes, I would have to really look into that, why it's 100. I don't know how many people actually reviewed it. I can't say I would be in that category if I had to score the film.
It's probably a bunch of Yelp people.
Yeah, I would say so too. I would say it's people who are just really hungry when they watch the movie. I would give it like a 7. It's very creative. It's funny. I'd be happy to never watch it again.
Hey, someone had to, right?
Yep.
Nailed it. Appreciate you, Rigby.
Thank you for your service, Rigby.
Yep.
Great joy of serving others. Appreciate you, bro. He's from Japan. Got his start in Japan, so a lot of his early work is working in the Japanese film and TV scene. So following Tampopo, between 1986 and 1987, he was in a movie called The Sea and Poison. He played Toda. He was also in a movie called Dokugan Ryu Masamune. He played Date Masamune, and I point this one out because based on the research that I was doing, this was a TV show in 1987. This was his big break. He played a samurai, and that set up his career. He's played a samurai in a lot of film and TV over the years, which will lead us into his Oscar-nominated performance here in a little bit. But that particular role on that show pushed him into this new trajectory, and I think that's important to point out. Over the next 13 years, so 1989 to 2002, he played various parts in 31 total Japanese TV miniseries and TV movies. So the guy was busy,
Wow.
right? We're talking 2.5 shows or movies per year during that time. Some notable ones during that time, knowing that we didn't really get a chance to watch many of these. He was in a movie called Welcome Back, Mr. McDonald. He plays a truck driver. So it sounds like a minimal role, but that one was from 1999, and it has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes as well. So some other smaller, lesser-known films that he's in that have gotten really good critical reviews. Some notable historical dramas he was in, as noted by Wikipedia, were Oda Nobunaga, Chushingora, and Bakumatsu Junjo Den. Someone check my pronunciations on that. I apologize if I screwed that up.
I don't want to congratulate you on that
best.
because my guess is you did screw it up. And so, bad job, Kyle.
Yeah, I should start it with the disclaimer before we went into this. Give us a little bit of leeway here. None of us are trained in the Japanese language, so we're going to do our best. So some other personal things during that time. James mentioned it earlier. He was diagnosed with leukemia in 1989 while filming Heaven and Earth. He had his relapse in 1991. In 1998, he was in a film called Kazuna, and he was nominated for Japanese Best Supporting Actor. He didn't win, but he was nominated. He's been in total nominated 3 times for Best Supporting Actor in Japanese films. And in 2002, he quit his agency. It's called the N Theater Group. It's essentially his acting agency. And he joined a new agency called K-Dash Agency. With that switch, he was in a movie called Senin no Koi, roughly translated to 1,000-Year Love, 2002, and he also earned another Japanese acting award during that one. So during those 13 years, he was super busy doing a lot of Japanese television and received a number of awards. So I think it's important to frame, while he wasn't in the American film scene yet, he was still at the top of his game in the Japanese scene. Right. That gets us to 2003. He makes his first big jump into American film in The Last Samurai as Katsumoto. I'm going to assume that everybody on this podcast has seen it and probably, for the most part, looks fondly upon it. But
I think I have it on DVD.
I do too. So I'll chime in. That portrayal of Katsumoto, for me, is one of my favorite Best Supporting Actor performances in the past 20 years. The movie only works if that character is done really well. And I look back very fondly. That's a very rewatchable movie for me.
I think that's well said, Kyle. I didn't think that until you had just mentioned that in regards to the movie working, because his character is the most interesting character in the movie in that he has Tom Cruise's character kind of in the palm of his hand and can do whatever he wants with like a prisoner of war. And it's so detailed and layered, and the portrayal of him as this dark, brooding man who's also like super endearing. And I thought he was tremendous in it. There's a reason why that kind of propelled him into U.S. fame immediately afterwards. I think it was an absolutely warranted nomination.
He did a really good job of portraying his character on an even ground than Tom Cruise, who's the hero of that story. I like that a lot, and we see that after this too. But I thought that was great to see, like Kyle was talking about.
In 2005, he was in a movie called Year One in the North. He played Hideki Komatsubara. But also in 2005, he was in Batman Begins, playing, I guess he played Ra's al Ghul, but he really wasn't Ra's al Ghul. That was Liam Neeson. So a minor role, but an important part of that movie.
Gets him into the Christopher Nolan, gets him on the short list of phone calls for movies. But he's for that role, he's a totally believable. Like when you think of somebody learning, martial arts and that kind of stuff, having him step out, I'd be like, oh shit, yeah, I could definitely learn karate from.
Right, he's played a samurai like 20 times at that point. It only makes sense, right?
Yeah, I'd much rather, if you're like, you can either learn it from him or Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson's only got a certain set of skills, but Ken Watanabe can do
tremendously
karate.
Particular set of skills.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that if he hadn't been in The Last Samurai, he probably wouldn't have gotten that role in Batman Begins?
Yeah,
I believe so.
That's fair. That's fair to say.
Because that's far enough in advance for it to come out, and then start the filming as Ra's al Ghul's decoy. So the timing works out.
Like riding the high of, oh, people recognize this guy, let's pop him in this movie. And it probably led to his involvement in Inception, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
I can actually confirm that it did. I looked into it.
There you go. A little sneak preview of what's to come here. Also in 2005, we run into his largest audience gap, which is Memoirs of a Geisha. In this case, The critics gave it a 35, and the audience gave it an 83. So it is a huge gap. We're talking almost 50 points. So it's a polarizing movie in a lot of ways. I had the honor to cover Memoirs of a Geisha. I will start by saying this. I had never seen it before. I knew of it, but I had just never seen it at any point in time. Much like the last movie I covered, Tulip Fever, I think a lot of the off-screen parts are really interesting with Memoirs of a Geisha. The plot itself, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that because I think most people have probably seen Memoirs of a Geisha at this point. But if you haven't, basic idea is Sayuri is this young girl who is kidnapped, essentially sold into a house that trains geishas in Japan. And her sister disappears, runs off, her parents die, and so she's kind of stuck in this lifestyle to become a geisha. She's narrating her own story, and essentially she falls in love with Ken Watanabe's character as a young girl, which is mildly creepy, and kind of becomes obsessed with him the rest of the way. The film itself, just so we're framing it up properly, it won 3 Oscars for cinematography, costumes, and art design, and it was nominated for 3 others. For score, which was done by John Williams, which is also the first movie he ever asked to score, which is interesting. Sound editing and sound mixing. So it received a lot of critical acclaim from the Academy, but when you look back, the critic score is very low, which makes it a really interesting movie to cover. The main reason the film is so controversial, and I don't know if you guys know this, but the 3 main actresses, Li Gong, Ziyi Zhang, and Michelle Liu, are all Chinese actresses playing Japanese roles.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah,
If depending on who you talk to, the producers would tell you that they opened up auditions for Japanese actresses and no one came. And so they just hired the best people they could.
Did they open it up in China?
They said they opened it up and no one showed up. Now, if you ask Japanese actresses who were interested in the role, they said the reason they didn't audition is because they felt that the movie wasn't going to do the concept of a geisha. They weren't going to do it well. And so they didn't want to be part of the production. Right? So it's a lot of he said, she said, no one's really sure. But that is the main reason that the critic score on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes is so low, because of the idea of representing culture and it not the geisha being very important to Japanese culture and it not having Japanese actresses filling those roles. Despite how talented those 3 actresses are, they're mega talented and very good in the roles. They're just not Japanese. So that's kind of like the legend behind the movie and why it's largest audience gap, because audiences generally like it. When you talk about Watanabe, he's not asked to do a ton in this movie. He plays a very important role as the chairman, who the main character, Sayuri, falls for when she's very young, and her entire goal of the movie is to eventually capture his love and his affection. That's why she becomes the most notorious geisha in Japan at a certain point. There is a pivotal scene at the start when she first meets him that makes the movie work. And he is extremely kind, very generous, takes some time to talk to her once she's a young girl and she's trying to figure out this whole new lifestyle. And his generosity sets her on this new path. So without that scene working and without Watanabe acting really well, the movie doesn't work, right? Similar to what we talked about with his role as Katsumoto in Last Samurai. So the rest of the movie, he's in scenes, but he's not doing a ton. It's a lot of facial expressions, and it's not until the end where he has that pivotal scene with Sayuri, and they confess to each other that they are very much in love with one another, and that kind of loops the story together. But I would say he does a good job at the 2 pivotal scenes he needs to. Otherwise, he's not asked to do a ton.
I saw it in high school because the girl I was dating at the time loved the book. And I had no interest in watching it, so I feel like I would do a terrible job actually giving a synopsis of it or a review of it because I just didn't pay attention the whole time.
It's a beautifully shot movie. It's well-deserved for the Oscars that it did receive. The sound is great. The art design, the costumes are gorgeous. And some of the camera shots are some of the better ones I've ever seen. So from a technical standpoint, it's awesome. The thing you guys will find entertaining is that there is a scene where they do a whole sumo scene, and one of the sumo wrestlers behind the scenes, I noticed him right away, and I was like, how do I know this dude? I go to IMDb. It's Fumiko from The Replacement.
Oh, nice.
All right.
Which
The guy who eats raw eggs?
yes,
Yeah.
Nadiska. That guy. He plays one of. He doesn't actually he's just standing in the background, but I just recognized him right away. I was like, that's the dude from The Replacements, isn't it? So it just kind of reminded me of a movie I really like. 2005, 2006. Moonlight in Tokyo. He plays an inspector. And also in 2006, he's in a movie called Memories of Tomorrow. He plays Mazuyuki Saiki. In this one, we tried really hard to find a copy of it, just to watch it. We just couldn't track it down. He won Best Actor at the Japanese Academy Awards for his role. And my understanding of the role is he plays a man who's slowly drifting into Alzheimer's and trying to maintain his relationship. And it sounds like a really interesting movie, an interesting role. Just none of us could really get our hands on it to be able to watch it. But luckily, 2006, we have his highest critic score, and that's Letters from Iwo Jima. And Case has that one.
Letters from Iwo Jima is a 2006 Japanese language American war film, directed and co-produced by Clint Eastwood, also produced by Steven Spielberg and Robert Lorenz. This part I found was interesting. It was written by Iris Yamashita and Paul Haggis. You guys recognize that name, right?
Yep.
I saw the name scroll across the screen. I was like, where the hell do I know that name from?
He won an Oscar for Crash. He also wrote $1 Million Baby too. He's like a big screenwriter.
I was going to say he wrote Texas Ranger Trial by Fire TV movie. That's what I was thinking.
Is that Walker Texas Ranger or just Texas Ranger?
It's Walker Texas Ranger TV movie. But he also did write Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. So, right from the jump, this movie's got some talent behind it. The movie's based on a book called Picture Letters from Commander-in-Chief, written by Tadamichi Kuribayashi, who is also the main character, played by Watanabe. I didn't know this, at least I didn't remember this, but it was a companion piece to Eastwood's Flag of Our Fathers. And technically, in the chronological point, this movie occurs right before or right as Flags of Our Father begins. It depicts the same battle, obviously, but from Flags of Our Fathers depicts the same battle from an American viewpoint, and Letters from Iwo Jima is obviously from the Japanese viewpoint. Despite being produced by an American film company, Letters from Iwo Jima is almost entirely in Japanese. Many people look at Letters from Iwo Jima as the more successful of the two movies, both in rating and in box office. So this movie stars Watanabe, and he is the general who writes all these letters, and that's what this story is written on. I'm not going to get into the whole plot because the movie's strengths are the way it's shot and how understated but yet skillfully the story is written. What it does is it takes these letters that the general wrote to his family, and then it also fuses in some other historical things. And that's how this movie was built. And that's also why Eastwood wanted to make sure that it was in Japanese language. Watanabe, he's brilliant in this movie. He does a great job showing both the authority and tenderness, being a general and making sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to. And then when he's in his quarters or he's off to his side or he's dealing with somebody on a one-to-one basis, he's got just this wonderful tenderness that really does come through. It won multiple awards in both America and Japan. Eastwood had joked on multiple interviews that it was considered a foreign film both in the U.S. and Japan. And so the year it was nominated for Best Picture, and had it won the Academy Award that year, it would have been the first foreign language film to win an Academy Award. It was a great movie, and I was excited to watch it once my name came up as having to watch this. And as I was watching it, it was definitely worth the anticipation. So I've got nothing but high praise for this film.
I watched it earlier today, and I think I went in being like, I couldn't remember which one. Was it this or was it Flags of Our Fathers that was a Clint Eastwood movie, because I don't really care for Clint Eastwood's movies that much. And then once his name came across, I was like, fuck, I picked the wrong one. Then I started watching, and I was blown away by the acting and the story and some of these. There's some scenes in it that are like disturbingly profound.
Yeah.
The soldiers, the whole they come across as showing a bunch of the Japanese culture and military and all that stuff, and how it's everything's for the emperor and for honor for your family and dying for your country, and it's better to kill yourself honorably than it is to die by the hands of Western pigs. And so like the amazing thing was this balance, because honestly every single movie portrays, and I read about this, every single movie portrays Japanese during World War II as they're all suicidal kamikazes.
Yep.
And they're just like batshit. And so it takes this more humanizing approach. There are people fighting under orders, just like every American soldier movie. And there's one scene where they capture an American soldier, and there's this dialogue between one of the Japanese like majors who spent time in California, and they communicate, and then they realize he's just a normal guy. Like he's no different than anybody else. But the same when the guys are in the cave and they all start grabbing grenades and blowing themselves up. Fucked up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Super fucked up. Like that was disturbing as hell. So I was blown away by the movie. I really, really enjoyed it. And Watanabe he's a fucking delight. And he is like, just like you said, Craig, he is so grounding and like forceful when he needs to be, and then like he can turn it off immediately and just have this like smile and be your best friend, and like all the good traits that you would expect out of somebody in a position of power like that.
I would agree with everything you just said, Warren. I think that's why Eastwood wanted to make this movie, because he saw in Watanabe's character like this guy who wouldn't back down to he wouldn't give in to sort of what you think is like the prototypical Japanese wartime culture, the do anything for the emperor. It's better to die at the hand of yourself than it is at the hand of your enemy. He portrays that character perfectly. And there are some, like you said, Warren, there are some very, very raw moments in it. The grenade part is really intense from what I recall. It's not just grenades, soldiers shoot themselves in the head. There's a lot of just gore and violence like you see in any other war movie. The scene that you mentioned, Warren, where the two soldiers are talking, where the U.S. soldier is like enamored by the fact that this Japanese soldier was in the Olympics, and he like recognized him and knows, he's like, oh my God, you were there. Like that was hit me on like a huge emotional level.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just reading some reviews, and A.O. Scott, who's the critic for the New York Times, who I like a lot, he said this movie was near perfect. And
near perfect.
Yeah. He's like a pretty strict critic. So when he says that means in my eyes, it's probably going to be a good movie. And I would agree with him. I think it's an awesome, awesome movie.
Damn, I need to see this.
Yeah, same here.
The attention to detail of shooting it to make it look older, right? I mean, that's a great way to phrase it, right? I mean, it's near perfect. And I even like that, I learned a little bit about that particular story. I didn't realize that being stationed on Iwo Jima for Japanese army that's basically a death sentence.
Yeah.
Because it was, all they were ordered to do was slow the Americans down. That was it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. It was in the way that they portrayed these soldiers, who none of them spoke English, and the way that he was able to direct them, and they were able to get these actors to show that, like, I've got to do my job, but yet I'm scared as hell. It was beautiful. I mean, you guys nailed it. It's near perfect.
Unlike Geisha, it was all Japanese.
Yeah, I was going to say, in contrast to Memoirs of a Geisha, it's all English, other than the first 2 minutes, which don't have Japanese subtitles to it. It doesn't do it the same amount of justice, right? The culture, from a technical standpoint, the costume's awesome, but because it wasn't Japanese actresses and not Japanese language, it loses a lot of luster there. From 2007 to 2010, Watanabe was in a couple of TV shows and movies, and he was also in Cirque du Freak, the vampire's assistant, as Mr. Tall.
Yeah, this was right around when the Twilight craze was probably sweeping across America, so they probably greenlit it thinking it would be like a extension of that.
Watanabe was also in The Unbroken. He played Hajime Onchi in 2009. He was in Clouds Over the Hill. He played the narrator, which was a 2009 TV series. That brings us to 2010. Now we're doing a little bit of a audible here. James was supposed to cover a different film, Unforgiven from 2014. We had a hellish time trying to run it down. So as a result, we went into a Munson's Choice option, and James is going to talk about Watanabe's role in the movie Inception.
Yeah, so I was supposed to see Unforgiven, and honestly, it is not possible for me to watch it unless I buy it outright or I watch it in Egyptian, which is available on YouTube. So that was not going to happen either. So we called the Audible, and luckily I got to watch Inception, which I will get out of the way now, is one of my favorite movies of all time. So obviously I'm going to be a little biased in my review here, so I wanted to let you guys know that beforehand. For those of you who haven't seen Inception, you need to do something with your life because this movie rocks. It's an action sci-fi thriller written, directed by Christopher Nolan. And this is him like completely in his bag, like time warps and messing with narratives. This is everything you like about Christopher Nolan right here. Trying to come up with a plot synopsis was actually hard for me because like most Nolan movies, like the narrative jumps between story timeline, but there's actually someone who counted how many times that happens in Inception, and it is 223 times does it drop between different dream layers and timelines. So for me to explain what's going on in that would probably take like the entire time of this podcast. So I've shortened it to this. Here's the plot real quick. It's a thief played by Leonardo DiCaprio. He's able to steal corporate secrets through the use of dream sharing technology. You don't need to go deeper on trying to figure out what that dream sharing technology is. It's just a guy who can go into your dreams. And a businessman played by Ken Watanabe gives him the inverse task of, instead of stealing a dream, he wants him to plant an idea in the mind of a CEO of a rival company to Ken's company in the hopes that it will ruin his biggest competition. This movie was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It actually won 4 Academy Awards, mostly for all of its visual effects. Its storytelling and special effects are amazing, and even when you know all the twists and turns that are coming, it's still just a pleasure to watch. It's smart, it's innovative, it's thrilling, and it succeeds both viscerally and intellectually. It's just, even knowing the outcome and the twist, you're still enthralled, and it holds up today, and it's about 10 years old. Yep. Watanabe plays the role of Saito, who is the businessman. He actually got that role because writer, producer, director Nolan felt that although he had appeared in Batman Begins, like we mentioned earlier, he didn't have that much screen time, and therefore should be given a more prominent role because Nolan really liked him both in The Last Samurai and then working with him in Batman Begins. Watanabe has and Craig, you actually mentioned this in your review. He kind of has this deep, powerful presence, like in many of his roles, and he's intimidating while still being endearing. His character is like 2/3 of his roles actively dying throughout the vast majority of this movie. But because of something that's explained in the movie, that time moves slower in dreams, he's in the movie the entire time. Similar to a lot of roles that we've talked about, he plays somewhat of a Japanese stereotype and like a particularly one-dimensional businessman. But since his character is actively dying throughout this movie, he actually did a great job humanizing him and showing the vulnerability and showing that, you know, while he was kind of holding the character's feet to the fire and threatening them, that he's part of the team and he's working with them. I can talk about Inception forever, so I'll just end it here so we could talk more about it when the wheel inevitably decides Leo. But this movie rocks, and so does Watanabe in it.
James, this movie's rated 13th on IMDb total rankings.
I saw that.
The lowest movie meter this has ever had was 525, and that was 5 months before it was even released. Since this movie's come out, the lowest it's ever been is 340. It's unbelievable.
I mean, it's great. It deserves all of the praise that it gets.
Such a great movie.
Negative things that you can say about some of Nolan's stories where they don't land as much as he would maybe want them to. This one lands on every level.
Inception's huge movie. That role for Watanabe was huge. Between 2010 and 2014, he keeps rolling. He's in 4 TV miniseries or TV movies. In 2014, he's in Godzilla as Dr. Shiro Serizawa.
I mean, his role in it it's necessary. He's more of an exposition character to really kind of explain like what's happening. but you also get like the classic Gojira line. So, it's an entertaining movie, but I wouldn't put too much into it.
Also in 2014, he was in Transformers: Age of Extinction. He played a character named Drift.
It's the highest grossing movie of 2014 and the 29th highest grossing film of all time. Transformers: Age of
That's why they
Extinction.
keep making them, man. That's why they're never going to stop making these movies if it just keeps going to see them.
So I guess the one important note of this role is its voice work. It's not on-screen work, so it marks a little bit of a departure from some of the other work he's done. 2014 was also when we saw his largest critic gap, which was the movie Unforgiven. But the movie itself had a 93 from the critics and a 78 from the audience. So although the gap is sizable, it's still a pretty good rating. So hopefully we'll get a chance to catch that movie at some other time if it becomes more accessible, because it's got some great ratings. I know it's a Japanese film. My guess is he's probably pretty good in it, but none of us saw it, so we can't speak to that. But we can talk about the lowest critic score. So we went from 93 for Unforgiven to pretty low in Shanghai, which came out in 2015. And Warren loves this movie, and he can't wait to tell us.
Guys, you're not joking. Like, this movie, it went from 93% Rotten Tomatoes to 4%. That's a fucking bomber.
Yep.
So this movie, it's like a noir film in Shanghai in World War II, like right before Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. And John Cusack works for the CIA or Naval Intelligence. I don't fucking know. He's too angsty. And Ken Watanabe plays the Japanese commander in the army, and Chow Yun-fat actually plays like this mobster.
That's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon dude?
Yeah, yeah. He was in the movie as well, and I was like, wow, this is a hell of a cast. It should be great.
Doesn't sound bad so far.
No, absolutely.
Lee Gong's in it, and she's gorgeous.
It's not good. It doesn't make any sense. You don't care about it. Jeffrey Dean Morgan's in it. All he does is sound like a douchebag. He dies.
I like Jeffrey Dean Morgan too.
It's really hard to get into because they put effort into this movie. Like I think it had a $50 million budget.
It sure did,
and it made $6 million, maybe. I mean, with a cast like that, you'd figure they'd make something, but it just, like, it was so Americanized and washed that it was like you just didn't give a shit about it. It was like, oh, we kind of got a dead time. John Cusack, go make out with this lady. Fall in love with her. It's Chow Yun-fat's wife in the movie. He's a gangster, so it sounds like a good idea. Like, they're just throwing in shit just to give it drama. And the thing that makes it so fucking cheesy is like those war movies where it's like the detective, guy's in a duster with a hat and it's raining outside, and he's like, I've been standing here for 10 nights, looking out, that vaudeville voice where it's just like basically narrating everything that's happening, and it's John Cusack's voice over everything. And so I expect to hear like say anything stuff. So, him standing there outside a girl's window with like a homophone, playing like an album,
playing Peter Gabriel.
Yeah, Peter Gabriel. Yeah, in your eyes. It's just like I just didn't give a shit about the movie. I watched it with my wife, and she laughed at my misery.
The screenplay can be best described as big old chunk of poopy.
Big old chunk of shit.
Hey, and Warren, you want to be enraged?
Yes.
That movie's budget was $31 million more than Letters from Iwo Jima.
Yeah, that fucking sucks, dude.
So, Warren, how would you describe Watanabe?
He's kind of like an antagonist, but only because he's from Japan and it's World War II. Like, that's the only reason why. But he ends up being like the hero of the movie because shocker, at the end, Chow Yun-fat dies. John Cusack's making off with his wife. They're about to hop on a boat during, when all this World War II shit kicks off. And he has the ability to stop them and keep them because she's a part of the resistance and all this other bullshit. But he turns the cheek and lets them get on the boat. Like, you just don't even give a shit.
One of the fatal flaws is the whole time he's like seeking out his mistress, right? And you think he's going to kill her. He's trying to kill her. The whole time it's streamlined. He wants to kill this girl if he can find her because the resistance is hiding her. Then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I love you. I appreciate you. I want to save you. And it's like, nah, none of this shouldn't happen. Like you were like the worst human ever. Now all of a sudden you have humanity. There's nothing that allowed you to build that humanity.
There was that one scene where Watanabe's like wife or whoever, the girl who's clearly on like having opium withdrawals, and Cusack basically helps him put her down.
Yep.
And like helps her, euthanizes her and helps her die peacefully. In that time though, like you see Watanabe go from this like enraged individual to like super consoling and comforting, like sheds tears like in an instant, and then kind of has to like flip the switch back and be like, "You dead, bitch." No, to Cusack, not to the lady. He was upset about that.
And he flips the switch well. It's just the screenplay shouldn't have asked him to do that. It was just a bad setup.
Right.
That is the last of our movie reviews. That's 2015 is Shanghai. Between now and 2015, so 2015 to 2020, he was in a variety of different movies. So he was in The Sea of Trees. He played Takumi Nakamura. And The Sea of Trees, just as we mentioned earlier, was a huge bombaroo in the box office, made $2,000 its opening weekend. It's an A24 production. By my account, it's the worst A24 production I've ever seen. And it's got a good cast in McConaughey and Watanabe, and it's based on a book that was written. Like it should have had some depth, but I have a feeling they just didn't do the idea of suicide. They just didn't do it justice. It just felt vapid.
Yeah, I watched that movie and I didn't enjoy it. And I've explained the movie to people, and they've been like, "Oh, I'd like to watch that." And I quickly correct them that
no, you do not
want to watch it because everything makes sense. I mean, like you said, Kyle, it's based on a good book. I mean, McConaughey, I enjoy all of his roles. Watanabe, I enjoy his. It's an interesting story with alcoholism and all sorts of personal issues.
Naomi Watts is in it too.
I never saw it, but I remember it getting reading like reviews of it at the time that I think it was Cannes or Venice Film Festival, one of the film festivals, that it just got booed like ridiculous, like
badly.
Yeah,
imagine that, a booing a movie where like they can't hear you, but you're just like, I need to let everyone know how I feel.
It wasn't just like a quick like 10-second boo. It was like a extended, couple minute boo, I think. So
a standing boo.
Yeah,
for quite a while. Yeah, it's well deserved. I will say, from a performance standpoint, Watanabe plays a suicidal man and is managing those emotions. And overall, he does okay. It's not his fault that the movie's bad. Again, screenplay and the approach. I think some of the directorial decisions there just didn't lend well to a good result. But it is a little bit different. He is still dying, as James so eloquently put. He dies in a lot of things. 2016, he's in a movie called Rage. He plays Yohei Maki. He is in the follow-up to the Transformers movies, so Transformers Last Night. Plays his character Drift again in 2017. He's in Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs as a head surgeon, a small role, 2018. He is in The King and I. He plays the King of Siam in 2018, which is the film adaptation of a play that he was on Broadway. And I believe he won, he was at least recognized with a pretty major award, right, Rigby?
He was nominated. I don't think he won.
Yeah, he was nominated for Tony Award for Best Actor.
Yep, and he was the first Japanese actor to be nominated for. I don't think he was nominated for a Tony, but definitely nominated for Best Actor at the Tony Awards, which is a cool feat.
And I think it's just important to note him going to Broadway. Just looking at the differences between doing a film. Doing it once, there's multiple takes, but then being on Broadway and doing the same performance night after night, it's an impressive use of his skills and certainly a departure from some of his screen work. Also, 2018, he was in Bel Canto. He played Hasakawa. Rigby, I know you watched this one.
He plays the typical Watanabe character. He's this rich industrialist who, from Japan, who is celebrating his birthday at the Japanese embassy in Peru, where Julianne Moore's character, who's this opera singer, she's there as like a guest to celebrate his birthday, and the embassy is taken hostage, or it's taken siege by terrorists, and Watanabe and Julianne Moore are part of a series of about 30 or so hostages that are in this month-long standoff with these terrorists. It's actually based off a true story that happened in the mid-90s, I think, in Peru as well. He dies in the end. Not to give spoiler alert, we mentioned that he dies or is seemingly about to die in 2/3 of his movies. So it's not surprising that he meets a unfortunate demise in this one. But he and Julianne Moore, they kind of fall in love in the movie. He's like obsessed with her in the beginning of the movie, and as the movie goes on, she sort of begins to fall for him as well. So they have good chemistry.
He kicked some ass in 2019 in Pokemon Detective Pikachu. He played Lieutenant Yoshida. And I know, Warren, you love this movie.
Oh, man, movie was a blast. Ryan Reynolds doing the voice of Pikachu was one of the funniest things ever. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was surprised. And Watanabe does not die in this movie.
He doesn't. He survives. Limited role, though. He's not in it a ton. He was also in the sequel, Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Can I talk about King of the Monsters here? Because this is a movie that I think deserved at least to be nominated for Academy Award. And if you guys will follow me on my logic here, you don't go see this movie because of the plot, right? It's all the plot is in the title. It's Godzilla. He's trying to be king of the monsters. So the reason why this movie deserves it is not for the plot or the screenplay. It deserves it for the visual effects. This is one of those movies where you go, you turn your brain off, you just eat as much popcorn as possible and just point at the screen and cheer as, a 3-headed dragon fights a moth the size of Texas. It's everything you want in like an action movie. And then I looked at who actually got nominated for visual effects the year it was up. 3 of them make sense. The Lion King, that was the adaptation where they had what looked like real animals. Avengers Endgame, totally understandable. Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, you could sell me on that. And then there's these 2. 1917, which ended up winning. I think it deserved to win for cinematography. I do not think it deserved to win for visual effects. I think that's a very clear, the Academy going, well, everyone liked this movie, so we should give it to that movie. And then The Irishman, which in no way deserves to be nominated for visual effects. I think you easily could have slid Godzilla in there, but because the Academy is so about itself, they would just refuse to acknowledge that this shitty popcorn thriller actually had amazing special effects, because it really did. That is my King of the Monsters rant. What I will follow it up with is he dies in this movie as well. Yep.
He pulls a Bruce Willis at the end of Armageddon moment. That's the best role that I would compare it to. And lastly, he was in Fukushima 50 as Masao Yoshida. All right, we're going to get to the Munson meter. For those who are new listeners, the way the Munson meter works, we rank each actor on a scale of 1 to 100. The categories we rank based on are longevity, right? How long have they been in the game? How consistent have they been? We look at pop culture impact. We cover their range as an actor. We talk about their awards footprint, any other talents that they might have. Do they write, produce, sing, whatever those things happen to be. We rate them on their personal life. Are they a great human? Are they a big old piece of shit, a big old turd? And also look at some of their comedy footprint. So we're going to start with Rigby.
I think I saw Letters from Iwo Jima before Last Samurai. I don't think I saw Last Samurai a couple years after it came out. His presence in both of those movies are still with me today. So I think he's incredibly talented. And, hearing his Broadway sort of accolades sort of adds to that. And, I think he can do the voice. He can do, I haven't seen him really be in anything comedy wise, but, going back to the age-old question, I don't really know if those are the roles that he wants anyway. He plays the stern yet affectionate character to a T. And I think, he's in the Christopher Nolan universe, as James mentioned. That adds points in my book as well. So I'm going to give him an 84. And I think I want to say that's a few points below what I gave Lithgow. And I think these two, their career arcs are almost, except for the comedic effect and the fact that Watanabe, I don't think, has written a children's book. I think their career arcs are very similar. And so I think that's a fair score to give Watanabe as an 84.
I'll jump in second. I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm not going to go last on this one. Some of the notes that I had on Watanabe for his score were he's owned his own production company since the 80s, which I think is interesting. So he's done some other work other than just acting. He, as we mentioned before, he's won a ton of Japanese acting awards, which I think, it's not necessarily Academy Awards, but those, they tell a story about how good of an actor he is in Japanese film and television. So I made sure to account for that. He's had a couple divorces. He had an extramarital affair. I mean, some of that took a little hit. He did a lot of work around the tsunami in 2011 doing awareness, so that helped him there. And I got to give him the birthday bump because he and I are born on the same day, October 21st. So with all that said, Watanabe's getting a 76 from me. Case, you're up.
All right. Well, a lot of the same things that you guys have said. I agree 100%. My favorite thing when we evaluate actors or actresses is when I see them on TV or in a movie, do I want to watch that movie? And he's a yes every time. I'll at least give it a whirl. And I think I proved that by watching Sea of Trees. But, I think, I'm just going to say everything everybody else has said, so I'll just cut it short. I'm going to give him a 72. That's one of my higher scores, and I really enjoy, his work and look forward to more from him.
Warren.
Ken's been around for a while, but he when you can be super successful in two completely different sides of the earth and two completely different cultures, like that's some skill. Japanese being a native tongue, and he plays great characters in English films, and so he does a really good job at that. He has, I could be doing something and hear his voice on TV and just immediately stop what I'm doing and look up, kind of like Craig said. His voice is it draws me in every single time. And the Nolan universe, it's great. Iwo Jima, Letters from Iwo Jima really blew my mind, and I really want to be able to see more of these other movies of his without learning another language. And that's unfortunately is going to kind of keep my score lower than what it should be. I really believe that if I had seen a bunch of those movies, I'd probably have them in the mid 80s. But I'm gonna give him a 77. I think when I see that he's in something, I know exactly what to expect from it, as long as he's not playing Too Tall or Mr. Tall in the Vampire. So I hope to see him in a lot more stuff.
James.
You guys mentioned it. He's been acting for the better part of 40 years. He's been nominated for multiple awards for all three phases of acting, so TV, theater, films. One thing I found really interesting is he is consistently, based on what I was watching, kind of cast into stereotypical one-dimensional roles that are very often a Japanese stereotype, and he's able to add depth to the characters that I don't think is originally there, and I think has a lot to do with how he portrays them. He's actually, a great representation of actors of Asian descent. We mentioned earlier, he's one of 10 actors of Asian descent ever nominated for Academy Award in an acting category. And he's one of 2 actors who's ever been nominated for an Academy Award and a Tony in acting. He does both movies that are artistically beautiful as well as kick-ass blockbusters like Godzilla. Kyle, you mentioned it. He's involved in nonprofit work. He started a charity after the earthquake that had the tsunami in 2011. That is something near and dear to my heart, so I respect him for that. I think if he was to lock in some more leading actor roles in American movies, which might sound a little ignorant of me, but I didn't know a lot of these movies other than the ones recently, and he's been acting for years. I think I rank him higher, and I think if he got nominated and won an Academy Award, that would be something that would probably make him the highest ranked actor that we've covered. With that all being said, I put him just under Lithgow, and I put him at 82.
Warren, what does that bring us in terms of an average?
That puts him at a 78.2. And that puts him at third, just behind Jessica Chastain and above Chris Pratt.
So the next podcast is going to drop on May 7th. The wheel will decide on April 30th. Yes, the wheel will decide on April 30th. We will have a guest. Chip Hessenflow from Too Much Scrolling will join us for that episode. As always, you can find us on Twitter at Munson's at Movies. You can catch us on Instagram at Munson's at the Movies. Email us at munsonsatthemovies@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. If you have ideas, thoughts, send them our way, or just talk shit to us on Twitter and Instagram. That's always good too. Any final thoughts from the Munsons before we wrap up this Munson's Choice episode?
No, this is a fun one. He's a talented guy, and kind of like you all said, when he goes on screen, you're happy that he's there. Sort of like John Lithgow. So
I'm really glad you rigged the wheel so we got to do him.
You're eternally welcome, my friend. I can't wait to do it one more time. At least another time. All right, Munson's out.
All right, let's go. Thank you for the education, gentlemen. We've just received a PhD in stupidity. Doctor, shall we?